Let me start with what I did. Um, if you've seen the thumbnail, you can see that I was dealing with male pattern hair loss, very obviously, at the age 20. It was coming on pretty fast at that time. And an inner voice said, do something about it. I had a friend, same age approximately, same hair situation approximately, setting in with him. And I remember I tried to tell him that I was going to figure out how to grow my hair back. And he had almost like an angry reaction to how stupid that was. And back then I was more sensitive to things like that. I've had a lot of time to sort of mature in my understanding of egos and shadow projections and triggers and all these fine things. And nothing but love for my friend. But of course, he didn't believe you could do anything about it. And so he proceeded to end up with the male pattern baldness head, which is nothing lesser. He's an amazing person, and that's not taking anything away from him. But a voice inside me said, "No, this is important to me. I'm going to find a way to grow my hair back." And I remember the day he started lecturing me with all that, and I didn't outwardly argue with him as I often don't with people, but my inner voice said a very loud and clear no. Like that can be your direction, but you don't get to tell me I can't. So I actually appreciate my friend. That particular friend challenged me many times, many ways, and I challenged him many ways, and we helped each other see a lot of things in life and face a lot of things perhaps from different perspectives. So it's sort of like iron sharpening iron, and I appreciate him in every way. So, anyway, what I did at the time, I did some research and I followed my intuition. My research has always been guided. I used to tell people back then, the few that might listen, I'm not sure what they made of it when I told them, but I used to tell people something is training me. I was learning, I was being given these ideas of concepts of how things work in the body, and then I would go look up and Google search or whatever it was called back then. I don't know if it even was Google back then, I don't care, but I would be directed to these obscure research papers and I would be able to put together easily what it was I had already been shown in my mind. So I was definitely being coached for a lot of things, which now I'm able to share some of it here with many of you, which is very rewarding to be able to use something you were trained for to serve your fellow beings. So what I came up with at the time was all I did, and this is super simple. I've told people this, and they always think it's supposed to be something more complicated, and they have 5,000 different questions. And I'm not going to complicate it. I'm just going to tell you what I did. Um, Simple, but for some not easy. I chose healthy oils. Most of it was organic jojoba oil at the time. Sometimes it was avocado oil. In the long term, I realized it was less about which particular oil and just the practice of keeping a healthy, uncooked um, source of oil saturated into my scalp. Because what it did is it sort of it created sort of a like a protective layer around the inflammation and the immune reactions that were occurring in the hair follicles. And I'll get into that more, what I came to understand over time, and how I came to where I didn't need these things anymore, which was a higher ideal, of course. So at the time, that was my healthy crutch and my regeneration. I kept my scalp saturated in oil everywhere I went, starting soon after that picture you see on the thumbnail. And after a while, I did notice small hairs coming in. I noticed that the progression of the hairline was halted. And within, I would say, 2 to 3 years, I had brought my hairline back all the way, as well as the bit of thinning that had started on the crown of the head area. That was all back. So for another few years after that, I would keep my scalp, and I'm talking really oily. If you're if you're worried about what your peers might say, that might be a challenge for you. I did get comments, of course, but I'm not someone who was going to let that stop me. So Another thing I would do is if I had to be in a work environment or somewhere where I got tired of having to answer the same questions all the time, I would just sort of cover my head. I would loosely cover it with a hat or loosely cover it with a bandana or something like that, so I didn't have to constantly address the inevitable questions. Why is your head so oily? And then when I was on my own in my own space in my own time, of course, I just, I had an oily head and I didn't care. So again, after restoring the hairline and the hair follicles, by providing healthy fats to sort of provide a healthy fat layer, a lipid layer in the scalp, which improves circulation. It kind of cushioned things. It softened things up. There was a hardening, a bit of a calcification, because when you're experiencing male pattern hair loss inside the follicle, there's plaque, just like in hardened arteries in a sense, and the interplay between male hormones, plaque buildup, and immune reactions is causing the hair to basically choke out after a while, and it gets harder and harder for a hair to grow there. I was able to put that together enough at a young age to just take action and stick with it, and it worked. So a few years beyond that, I kept applying the oil. I got to where I would do it maybe every other day, and then it was like a few times a week, and then it might have been once a week. And I noticed that I wasn't having any problems. But during that time, there was personal growth, there was personal change. A lot of my health habits, lifestyle, there was consciousness improvements, you could say. And it got to a point eventually where I instinctively knew I just didn't need the oils anymore. And sure enough, I don't. Um, in other words, at this point, actually, my hair has continued to improve for all these years since, and at this point, that doesn't require any kind of application of oil. I have played around with other things. I've tried onion juice on the scalp, which did stimulate more little hairs to start poking through and growing. But of course, you reek like onion all the time, and you get it in your eyes every time you sweat. It's not the most convenient thing, um, but it works. And let's see, I've tried magnesium oil on the scalp. That has a good effect on hair follicles. It made my hair sort of tangled together and really rough. The texture of the hair didn't like it, but the follicles definitely did. I do keep and make my own herbal serum at this point, which I like to apply just for faster hair growth at this point. Um, what it's made out of currently, I use things from the property here. Um, the only thing not from the property here is a little bit of peppermint essential oil that I put in the water. And then in that water, I juice and strain He Xiao Wu that I grow here, um, nettle, nettle, because a bunch of good properties there. What else do I use currently? Let me think what I put in my last, most recent serum. I updated again the other day. It also has um, Gotu Cola. I ground a little bit of Gotu Cola for the microcirculation and the collagen promoting properties of it. Why not? That's a good one. We grow that here. Um, Trying to think if there was a fourth ingredient in the last batch I did. Any one of these things helps. So I just kind of mix them together, and it's just a nice thing. It's nice to my scalp. I just put it in clean water after straining it, so it's kind of, and I refrigerate it. It's kind of a just kind of a green water basically, and I just kind of pat some around on my scalp and just let it dry in, and then you don't even know it's there after that. But it's really nice to the scalp. Um, but it's unnecessary. I mean, I went for years, you know, not doing anything on my hair, and it's not like I lost any. So at this point, it's not needed. Now, why? Retrospectively, it's very, very clear to me what's happened. Again, the phenomenon, the reality of how the physical form is always attempting to catch up to what your consciousness is doing. I can look back at what was happening inside of me around the time I was experiencing the male pattern hair loss, and I can basically say that it was an autoimmune reaction. In other words, everybody knows, or probably who studied this topic, that some guys can have really high androgens and have no hair loss, right? I no longer have any sensitivity to my own androgens on my head. Now, what changed? Well, the other factor here that people often miss is that it's an autoimmune reaction that's actually damaging the hair follicle and breaking it down. This is your own immune system attacking part of you, just like in autoimmune forms of arthritis, and a bunch of other conditions, a bunch of other autoimmune conditions that now plague society more and more. But I know what it was from in my case, and this will correlate to others. Maybe not the exact narratives here, but what it came down to is, but it's, you could say, internal conflict. Um, the difference between the truth that your spirit knows, but when you don't know that, what your ego believes is in conflict with it, and the things you pick up in this world that are detrimental and self-destructive. Some people would think in their ego, well, I'm not self-destructive. I think I'm the best. It's everybody else that's the problem. But there's still a spiritual law here, whether you're aiming all your judgments and condemnations and fears and problems at yourself, like I was doing, or you're aiming it out there at somebody else. To harm another is to harm yourself. To judge another is to judge yourself. To condemn another is to condemn yourself. And the body responds accordingly to what's going on in your consciousness. So, because I had a lot of um, very dysfunctional beliefs, ideas, um, very, very negative thoughts stemming from them that I picked up in this world, the internal battle, that was just one of the ways that it was playing out physically, was an autoimmune reaction occurring on my scalp. And there's a very good chance that the pain I used to feel in my joints at that age when I would lift heavy weights was probably some sort of autoimmune thing occurring in my connective tissues as well. Autoimmune arthritis, in other words. And over the years, as I've continued to strip away lies and deceits and destructions and become more unified with the actual creator, become more one with God, or at least get more of the illusion of the ego's darkness and ignorance out of the way to realize a truth that was there. The internal battle, the fires go out and there's more harmony, and then the body doesn't need to show you or follow your lead and be attacking itself anymore. Okay? And again, if you're attacking yourself, that's one thing. Some people, like myself, I would prefer to hurt me than hurt someone else, but it's really all the same principle. And if you're attacking others in your mind, in your beliefs, in your philosophy of life, in your understanding, which is all in the ego, it's all incorrect. Anytime you are acting on something untrue, um, there's natural consequences. It's cause and effect. Some of these consequences are physical. You can see them. Some people would prefer to start with the physical and then look deeper to the underlying spiritual cause, the consciousness cause, where real energy and creation and life comes from. Others might start from the other side, but it doesn't really matter. These things are all connected. And my body was just showing me what I was doing to it. You know, that's what it comes down to. So, I think that's it. I'm going to keep this video very simple. I've had long conversations with people about hair loss and a million different threads of information about this hormone and this immune factor and that immune factor and this peptide and that peptide and this element and that element and this technology and that technology and this drug and that drug. And I realize there's a huge industry and a lot of books and a lot of talk and a lot of stuff going on out there about, you know, um, male hair loss or any kind of hair loss, really, different subcategories. But to me, I followed the still inner voice that I was able to hear on that one topic, and it showed me something. It showed me that when you hear something inside of you say, no, this doesn't need to be my truth at all because it's not the truth and I don't believe it, you can watch other people live out what they think is the truth, and you can watch them experience the consequence of um, the untrue thing they're believing. And hmm, if you stick to that gift of what you're being shown inside and you follow it through, you'll find that what you knew is true, the inner higher truth. And this applies to a lot of things in life, but it needs to be authentic. It doesn't need to be like a mental narrative. You can't use your ego thinking mind to just say something to yourself. I believe my hair will grow back when you actually don't. Okay. Um, in other words, this just arose within me naturally. I didn't know it would. It was coming from um, I'll just call it the still small voice within. It wanted me to act on something that I was being shown from the inside and walk it through and see what would happen. And I never thought it would have anything to do with talking to other people about these things, but I knew it was part of my overall training in life for various things. And so it's a gift to be able to share this with you guys. So perhaps like myself, you need to start with some very, I called it a crutch. Nothing wrong with that. If your leg is broken and you need to get from here to there, you might want to fashion a crutch, right? So you can get from here to there. Um, so in my case, those healthy oils, they were reducing the inflammation. They were lowering the autoimmune attack type reaction. They were keeping things soft and soluble. They were allowing blood flow. They were just combating the kind of battlefield that had been forming in my hair follicles. Okay, and when the time was up and I didn't need it anymore, I knew that too. Okay, and I just relaxed and listened to it, and it got to where I didn't have to think about hair. In fact, after solving the problem with the oils, I was also learning a lot of other things about physiology at the time, but it was all spiritually guided learning. I didn't buy a course or follow some person's protocol. I would be given these insights that would just show up inside my mind, and then I would go and research. This was me kind of learning to use the internet for something. And retrospectively, I think it was kind of miraculous the things I found because I would always immediately somehow be guided to the correct obscure research papers and I could always understand them.